signed up to serve, there wasn't a line. And there shouldn't be a line when they get back. Not for the jobs, not for education, and not to receive the medical benefits or help or protection that they've earned. I see my colleagues, leaders on this bill, Senator Levin and Senator McCain are here, and I again thank them for working with me on this amendment. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Arizona.
I want to thank the Senator from Minnesota for her strong efforts on behalf of the men and women in the military and their welfare and benefits. She is an advocate and a person who is committed to making sure that not only those who are now serving but those who have are cared for by our society and by our military and our veterans facilities. So I thank the Senator, and I appreciate the very eloquent statement that she just made.
Mr. President.
Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of S. 1867.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Michigan.
While the Senator from Minnesota is here, let me add my voice of thanks and appreciation and for what she continually is fighting for in the area of sexual assault. Her amendment makes great sense. We've cleared it on our side. We hope it gets cleared so that we can get this into a package, and we hope we can get a package that is adopted. But I want to just commend the Senator for her intrepid effort that just is really awe-inspiring on behalf of people who need all of the fight and all of the protection that we can give them. And those are people who've been assaulted sexually. And I want to commend the Senator.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arizona.
I send an amendment to the desk as modified number 1246 and ask for its consideration.
The amendment is already pending.
Mr. President, the amendment is to require the Secretary of Defense to consult with the Armed Services Committee in commissioning an independent assessment of United States security interests in East Asia and in the Pacific region. It has been cleared both sides, by both sides. I urge adoption of the amendment.
Mr. President.
Without objection, the amendment is modified. The question is on the amendment.
Mr. President.
All those in favor say aye.
No, Mr. President, I just wanted to say something first. I want to be recognized.
The Senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, before the amendment is adopted, I just want to indicate our support of the amendment. It's in a very significant area which has to do with our force structure in the Pacific. Senator McCain has been very, very active in wanting to look at that. Because we've got to look at it in depth, and he has agreed that this study, which would be done in consultation with people who have knowledge, can be done independently and in a prompt way with an independent study. And I think he has reached that conclusion. I think he is right. I believe that Senator Webb, if he were here, would want to indicate his strong support, because the three of us really have worked together for this kind of an effort. And I, with that, just indicate my strong support and yield the floor.
The question on the amendment is modified. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Move to reconsider.
Move to lay on the table.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I would ask my friend, the chairman, if perhaps we could give our colleagues a brief update on where we are and what there's not that many amendments remaining. There's a couple of rather serious amendments concerning detainee that are still outstanding, but overall I think we could tell our colleagues that we are pretty well moving along. We still have a pending package of amendments that have been agreed to by both sides that unfortunately we're unable to move forward, but hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Mr. President, we indeed have been making progress, number one. We made significant progress today both on the pending amendments that needed to be addressed by the full Senate as well as by a major package of amendments which have been cleared on both sides. There's another package of amendment to which there's been they've been cleared, which means that they're available to everybody and there's no objection by anybody to the substance of those amendments. If there is any objection, then they're not going to be cleared. They would have to then be brought up to the whole body. And tomorrow, we have a number of significant amendments to address, including the Feinstein amendments, the Menendez-Kirk amendment on Iran sanctions, just being a few of them, but there's a number of other ones as well. And in a moment, what I'm going to be asking for is unanimous consent in a moment that when we come in tomorrow, that the first amendment that be pending tomorrow be my amendment on number 1293 on high-speed ferries, which apparently will require a roll call. So I just want to alert everybody that while we're preparing a unanimous consent agreement laying out what the order would be for tomorrow, what we'll start with, that is what our intention is, and I've talked already, of course, to Senator McCain about that, and he is agreeable that we start with that amendment number 1293. And Mr. President, we get this one, other one. We think we can get wrapped up tomorrow, but there are serious amendments remaining. The Menendez-Kirk amendment is a very serious amendment and one that probably is going to deserve some debate time, as well as the Feinstein amendment, and the Sessions amendment also is this one as well. So I think our colleagues can be prepared for a pretty interesting day tomorrow. Mr. President. Oh, you want?
Mr. President.
Senator from Alabama.
I ask unanimous consent that my amendment number 1185 be modified with the changes at the desk.
Without objection.
This amendment would simply require the Department of Defense to include the discussion of a feasibility and advisability of establishing a missile defense site on the east coast of the United States in its Homeland Defense Hedging Strategy Review. I hope my amendment could be accepted by a voice vote, and I thank Senator Levin and Senator McCain for working with me to get language I believe all can agree to.
Mr. President.
Senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, the Sessions amendment as modified has been reviewed, and I know it's cleared on this side, so I'm confident it's been cleared by both sides of the aisle. The amendment would require the Department of Defense to report to Congress on the findings and conclusions of the Department's Homeland Missile Defense Hedging Strategy Review, including a discussion of the feasibility and advisability of establishing a missile defense site on the east coast of the United States. The administration officials have committed to providing Congress with the results of its hedging strategy review. This amendment would make it clear that the Department is required to do exactly that. I just want to thank the Senator for his amendment, for modifying it, and hope now we can adopt it.
Thank you.
Is there further debate? The question is on the amendment as modified. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The
The
amendment is agreed to.
Move to reconsider.
Move to lay on the table.
Without objection.
Now, I believe we have one of Senator Inhofe's amendment, which we can pass, which is now it's, I think, agreeable on both sides.
Oh. Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, I have an amendment number 1098. It is at the desk, and it's 1098 as modified. I ask for its immediate consideration.
Clerk. Clerk Troop. Without objection, the amendment is modified. Is there further debate? If not, Senator from Michigan.
And I appreciate. Let me make one comment.
Senator from Oklahoma.
About this amendment. It's one I do appreciate. First of all, I just want to make this general statement about I don't recall in the years I've been here seeing the majority and the minority working so closely together to get a very tough bill passed and done in the right way. And of course, they've helped me with several of my amendments that have been accepted. This one, I think they agreed to it. It directs the DOD to have a report on the effect of boycotts against our domestic contractors. It is modified, and I'd ask for its immediate consideration and its adoption.
Is there further debate? Questions on the floor on the amendment as modified. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Move to reconsider. Move to lay on the table.
Without objection.
Now, Mr. President, I believe that Senator Inhofe may wish to be recognized to talk about another amendment or a couple of amendments that he has. We will not take any further action on those amendments. I think we are perhaps hopefully ready soon to offer unanimous consent about what I described a moment ago, how we would begin in the morning. But we will wait for that unanimous consent agreement to be prepared, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, I have two amendments that are very significant. However, I don't believe they'll clear, and there are reasons that I will not be bringing these amendments up. But it is very significant that we do address a problem. The Mineral Leasing Act prohibits military installations from receiving any revenues from mineral exploration on these lands. Well, exploration has taken place in my state of Oklahoma and other places where we have, with the new horizontal drilling, we're able to get at some of these reserves. But the problem is that this incurs an expense by the military operation. The one I'm talking about right now happens to be the depot located in McAllister, Oklahoma. Under the Mineral Leasing Act, it governs oil and gas leasing on federal lands. It gives it the responsibility to the Bureau of Land Management. The problem is we want to explore it and want to accommodate others who are going to go after these tremendous reserves that exist, not just in Oklahoma, but elsewhere. But there's not a mechanism by which they can be paid for expenses incurred by the local installation. We are going to be working on this and coming up with some kind of a solution to the problem. I will not be offering this as an amendment. The second one I will not be offering is one that is very significant, and that is treating what we refer to as the sub-S or subpart S carriers, non-scheduled carriers, who are taking currently material and personnel into areas like Afghanistan. Well, we have crew rest responsibilities, saying that you cannot be a crew cannot be working for more than 15 hours. The problem is this: 95% of the military personnel going into Afghanistan and some of these other areas go in by subpart S operators, and they are exempt from the crew rest. Right now, there's legislation that is pending that would make them fall under the crew rest requirements. Now, military can take them in, but military doesn't have the capacity. And that's why 40% of all material and 95% of personnel are being brought into these zones. As an example, if you're going from the logical place, which would be in Germany, to go into Afghanistan, you'd carry it in but you would not be able to offload whatever cargo or personnel and then get back and go back to Stuttgart or wherever it is the location would be in Germany, because that would exceed the crew rest. And on the other hand, they are precluded from having civilian aircraft staying in places like Afghanistan. So there's no solution to it. We want to address this. We're going to be trying to do it. We feel this was not clear, and as it is now, I'm not going to be offering it tonight, but it is one that I think is very significant. And with that, I would yield the floor.
Senator from Michigan.
While the Senator from Oklahoma is here, I wonder if he is also, it is intent, we're trying to get a current list of amendments, whether it is his intent to withdraw number 1101 on C-12 aircraft.
I don't have that one with me, and I'd rather wait until I get I didn't come down prepared for that. There is one other one that I will be wanting to get past having to do, and I know there are several amendments on Guantanamo Bay detention. This is on long-term high-value detainees, and it's my intention to be offering that tomorrow.
I think we're going to have a full day tomorrow. Do you have the UC?
Senator from Oklahoma.
Ask unanimous consent that the quorum call and it be rescinded.
We're not in the quorum call.
All right. Mr. President, I have currently 4 amendments that I will withdraw at this time so that we unclog some of this. They would be, and I ask unanimous consent to withdraw amendment number 1094, 1095, 1096, and 1101.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Come in 9:30. Mr. President, let me just thank the
Senator from Michigan.
let me thank the Senator from Oklahoma for helping us to get our list of amendments whittled down to where we can hopefully have a manageable group for tomorrow. We're going to have a very busy day tomorrow. We have a lot of amendments to address and dispose of, but it's doable because we've had the cooperation of senators, and it's our goal. We must finish this by 6 o'clock. Hopefully everyone has a right to a vote if their amendment is germane and is pending, and that's what our list is. We hope we'll have a chance to debate all of these amendments as well as have a vote on them, but we're starting, I believe we'll be coming in, as I understand it, at 9:30. That's the current plan, and we'll be back on the bill at 11. We have to start off immediately and hope that we'll have a vote on my amendment within a few minutes after it's offered. I don't think there needs to be a lot of debate. There will be some opposition to my amendment, I understand, and hopefully the senators who oppose it will be notified tonight that my amendment is first up, and that they will then be prepared to debate this at 11 o'clock. Do you have a copy of this? Now, Mr. President, I would ask then that unanimous consent that when the Senate resumes consideration of Senate Bill 1867, the Defense Authorization Bill, tomorrow, December 1st, 2011, that the pending amendment be the 11th Amendment, number 1293, relative to high-speed ferries.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object. I will.
Senator from Arizona.
I would just like to thank the Chairman for the progress we've made and also, again, point out, as the Chairman just did, we have some very serious issues that deserve debate and discussion. But when cloture expires, the 30 hours expires, there will be an automatic votes triggered at that time. So we look forward to working with our colleagues to make sure that they have sufficient time to debate the amendments, and it would be very regrettable, as important as some of these amendments are, that we back up to the expiration of the cloture time, and that would then trigger automatic votes. So I hope we can, I'm sure we'll get cooperation of all of our colleagues. I thank, and I
Without objection, so ordered.
And I do not object. Mr. President,
Senator from
I
Michigan.
would ask unanimous consent now that the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Yeah, I'll worry about it. You can go. I also want to... Mr. President,
Senator from Illinois,
I ask consent the quorum call be suspended.
without objection.
Mr. President, I want to take a few moments and thank a remarkable woman on my staff. Sylvia Gillespie in my Springfield office is retiring after 12 years. When you walk into that office in Springfield, Sylvia is the first person you see, and her smile has made thousands of people feel welcome. Her heart is as warm as her smile. Now, Sylvia's from the south side of Chicago. She likes to say the same as Michelle Obama. She went to Austin O. Sexton Elementary School on South Langley Avenue. She grew up on the same streets where that infamous street gang, the Blackstone Rangers, made a lot of trouble. But she survived that experience and went on to make a life in the service of others. When she looks back at her life, Sylvia gets a little choked up and she says, "How did I go from being that little girl in the ghetto to working for a senator?" Well, the answer is very simple, Mr. President. Sylvia Gillespie really cares about other people. She has helped countless people during the 12 years that she's worked in my office. From helping people get their passports so they wouldn't miss a family wedding in some foreign country, speaking on behalf of constituents who ran into trouble with federal agencies like the Internal Revenue Service, Sylvia has been such a positive force in the lives of so many people. But the work she's most proud of, and the one that she'll really talk to you about, is what she's been working on for the last 2 years, helping families in Illinois stay in their homes. Sylvia has helped dozens of families stay in their homes during the mortgage crisis when they thought they'd lost everything through foreclosure. She'd sit on conference calls with banks for hours at a time, refusing to take no for an answer. You don't want to cross Sylvia Gillespie when she's fighting for somebody she believes in. Ask her why, and she explains, "I just felt like we just couldn't lose one more home. If I could prevent a family from losing their home by being on the phone with the bank for 3 hours, I would do it." And she would. Sometimes she would persevere long after the homeowners had given up. One particular case, a hard-working mom with 2 kids had done everything right. She played by the bank's rules, but she was still only days away from watching the home that she loved be auctioned off. She was ready to give up, but Sylvia wasn't. Sylvia asked, "Have you ever seen a mustard seed? That's all you need. Faith the size of a mustard seed to get through this." That was Sylvia. And after a long, grueling process, guess what? Sylvia prevailed. The woman received her loan modification. With Sylvia's help, the mother and her children will be spending this holiday season right where they want to be, in their own home. That mom is just one of the many, many Illinoisans who are going to join me in being sad when Sylvia decides to retire. When Sylvia is not working hard in my office, she spends a lot of time at the Abundant Faith Christian Church. She loves that church. She's invited me there on Sundays, and she really gets into it. She is a woman of faith, and she's a great singer, and she just throws herself heart and soul into their services. Every Sunday morning, she and a few others cook up a breakfast for the community people who live near the church. They serve the families of patients at a nearby hospital and homeless people who come over from the neighborhood shelters. Let me tell you another thing about Sylvia. She's a great cook and a great baker. If you ask anyone in my Springfield office, they'll tell you that her cookies and cakes are the best. We've seen Sylvia dressed up in her full regalia as a clown, which she does once in a while to bring cheer and fun to parties and events in her community. She's a happy person, and it's a joy to be around her. She also has a great talent for decorating. One of her last responsibilities in my office before her official last day retirement was setting up the Christmas decorations. And thanks to her, our office in Springfield is in full swing for the holidays. We're going to miss Sylvia in our office. I speak for everyone and countless people when I thank Sylvia for the outstanding 12 years of service she's dedicated to helping people in Illinois. Sylvia is the mother of two beautiful grown daughters, Danette and Janaire. She's also a proud grandmother of three grandchildren, ages 15, 13, and 11. Now she's got to make a tough choice. Which granddaughter will she join and live with? They both want her. She's got to decide whether to go with Danette in Portland, Oregon, or stay with Janaire in Davenport, Iowa. Well, whatever her choice is going to be, she told me there's one thing she wants to make sure of. She's got a reservation for the ticket of Barack Obama's second inaugural. She made the first one. She wants to be at the second one, too. I've made that promise to her. Wherever she goes, I know that Sylvia Gillespie will continue to be an inspiration for everyone she meets and will, as long as she lives, reach out a helping hand to people who need a little assistance, a little encouragement, and that great Sylvia Gillespie smile. Sylvia, thanks for 12 years of wonderful service in our office in Springfield. I wish you and your family the very best for many years to come. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President,
Senator from Illinois.
I ask consent the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
I ask the Chair to lay before the Senate a message from the House with respect to H.R. 394.
The Chair will lay before the Senate the message from the House.
Resolved that the House agree to the amendment numbered 1 of the Senate to H.R. 394, entitled an act to amend Title 28, and so forth and for other purposes. And further, resolved that the House agree to the amendment number 2 of the Senate of the aforesaid mentioned bill with the following House amendment to Senate amendment.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment and the motion to reconsider be laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed with the consideration of Senate Resolution 341 submitted earlier today.
Clerk will report.
S.Res. 341, designating the first full week of December in 2011 as National Christmas Tree Week.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, the motion to reconsider be laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, and any related statements be printed in the record as if read.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I understand there are 6 measures at the desk, and I ask for their first reading en bloc.
The clerk will read the titles of the bills for the first time en bloc.
S.J. Res. 30, joint resolution extending the cooling-off period under Section 10 of the Railway Labor Act and so forth. S.J. Res. 31, joint resolution applying certain conditions to the dispute referred to in Executive Order 13586 of October 6, 2011, and so forth. S.J. Res. 32, joint resolution to provide for the resolution of the outstanding issues in the current railway labor management dispute. S. 1930, a bill to prohibit earmarks. S. 1931, a bill to provide civilian payroll tax relief to reduce the federal budget deficit and for other purposes. S. 1932, a bill to require the Secretary of State to act on a permit for the Keystone XL pipeline.
Mr. President, I now ask for a second reading. I object to my own request, all en bloc.
The objection is heard on the measures. Measures will be read for the second time on the next legislative day.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the appointment at the desk appear separately in the record as if made by the Chair.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, the Senate adjourn until 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, December 1st, 2011, that following the prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, the Journal of Proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the 2 leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, that following any leader remarks, the Senate be in a period of morning business until 11 a.m., with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each, with the time equally divided and controlled between the 2 leaders or their designees, with the majority controlling the first half and the Republicans controlling the final half. And that following morning business, the Senate resume consideration of S. 1867, the Department of Defense Authorization Act, post-cloture. Finally, that all time during adjournment and morning business count post-cloture on S. 1867.
Without objection.
Mr. President, we expect to complete action on the Defense Authorization Bill during tomorrow's session. Additionally, the Majority Leader filed cloture on the motion to proceed to S. 1917, the Middle Class Tax Cut Act of 2011. If no agreements reached, this vote will be Friday morning. If there's no further business come for the Senate, I ask that it adjourn under the previous order.
Senate will stand adjourned until December 1st, Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Wrapping up today's work in the Senate as lawmakers continue discussions on fiscal year 2012 defense programs. Earlier today, the Senate agreed to limit further debate and amendments on the measure in an 88-12 vote. That sets up a possible